Women of Reddit, what was your worst run-in with a creep? In 5th grade, after ballet practice, I was only wearing shorts and a jacket over my dance clothes, leotard and tights, and standing in a Chipotle line. Some old dude was behind me and asking me about my phone. According to my mother, he was looking at my body, scanning it up and down. Even before I found that out, he gave me the creeps. When we left, he rushed to pick up his order and ran out the door after us and followed us home. He stopped following at the last turn. I had trouble sleeping. There was a creepy hunched old man who used to come into a pub I worked at. He used to say and do slightly weird things, and then one day he called one of the glass collectors fat. She was 16 at the time, and to apologize he went to fist bump her, then grabbed her hand and put her fingers in his mouth. A few years ago, I lived in a tiny condo right next to a few trails in San Diego. I was on a pretty strict running hiking routine. One night it got dark faster than expected. A man who appeared to be about 6'3", 200 pounds approached me as I was nearing the end of my hike. He told me with a smirk on his face to be careful, as there are many things that could hurt me when the sun goes down. The next day, as I am exiting my back gate, he's standing there as if he's waiting for me. He introduced himself and admitted he's been watching me for a while. I decided to pretend like I was grabbing something from my car and went back into my house. For the next few days I see this guy circling my condo, looking in if the curtains are open. He was always walking around day and night. I checked the Megan's Law website and surprise, there he was. Multiple charges including rape by force or fear and child pornography. I decided to contact his parole officer and he immediately returned my call, stated he could tell I fit his MO and to use extreme caution. He said he would do what he could to get him out of the neighborhood. After that call I thankfully never saw him again. I was 19, worked at a main library in my city with several floors and an elevator. I was taking a book truck. The library guard got on. As soon as the door closed, he cornered me and kissed me. He was at least 40 and much bigger than me. I never got on an elevator alone with him again, nor with anyone else that I didn't know. So, last year I got a flat tire on a semi-busy road right when a snowstorm started. Since I had AAA, I figured I would use one of my roadside assistants to have them replace the tire with a spare that I had, and I wouldn't have to go outside since I forgot gloves. While I was waiting, a mid-40s, early 50s man came up to my window and asked if I needed help, thinking that he was just a good Samaritan at the time. I thanked him but told him, no, I was just waiting for AAA. Now, if he left here, I would have a nice story about a guy willing to help me with a car problem. Instead, he gets downright pushy. He lives nearby. I can just take my car there and change it in his garage. Why don't I just stay in his house until AAA comes? I kept telling him no until he starts yelling, and I rolled up the window and he starts pounding on it. Eventually he left when the AAA guy came, but I still took a very long and circuitous route home. I was 8 years old and waiting for the bus in the morning to go to my mom's work. A guy sat next to me at the bus stop and his bus pass was the wrong color, expired. He told me he loved me, and as scary as it is, I said thank you. When the bus finally came, I got on first and the bus driver lady immediately shut the door behind me. She said the man knelt down to try and look up my shorts and that he wouldn't be taking the bus with us. I told my mom, and after work we went and bought me my first pepper spray as a ducking 8-year-old. I was walking my dog, made the mistake of not rushing home. Okay, once it got dark, a man in a baseball cap, oversized jacket blocked my path to comment how pretty my dog was, how I must take good care of him. I smiled tightly, thanked him, told him to have a good day, nodded when to go around him. So he naturally grabbed my arm, said, yeah, I bet you take real good care of anything you have. You married? I lied, said yes. He let me go but followed me home. I wound up calling my boyfriend to come pick me up. My dog is my security blanket on walks. He's just a timid basset hound, but my creepy encounters drop 90% when he's with me. He won't walk down my driveway now though. After this extremely tall guy got pissed when my dog wouldn't let him pet him and proceeded to charge both of us. Chased us all the way back to my block, where I dodged between some houses to lose him. Now I have to drive my dog to different neighborhoods to talk him on a walk. I usually carry mace but forgot that day. I hate the shit we have to deal with. It shouldn't be a mistake not to rush home before dark. You should be able to duck and walk your dog whenever for wherever, and people who haven't experienced it don't really get how scary it is in the moment, because you don't know how far it's going to go, whether it's just a creep messing with you, or you should be scared for your safety or even your life. You don't know until it's over. Dude, my neighbor, who relentlessly bothers and freaks me out, I feel unsafe, has a sweet dog that my dog would play with in the apartment yards before I knew he was to be absolutely avoided. He played nice for a couple weeks and got my dog accustomed to him, before he started texting me 72 times in a row with very personal, very disturbing messages. It sucks that my usually protective dog was fooled. I am not so sure dogs have intuition now. Whenever a drunk high man approaches, she barks and growls like nothing I've heard before, but I am convinced it's the slight difference in body movement language. Weird Larry lived in my dorm. He unsuccessfully hit on all the girls, which is why he was Weird Larry. It totally ruined his self-esteem. One night, Larry just showed up and invited himself into my room. I was not fully clothed. He took this as an invitation and climbed up into my bunk bed. I asked him to get down, and he asked me to come up there with him so we could have sex. When I refused, he took some quarters out of his pocket, put them on my nightstand and said, "What if I paid you? You could do your laundry." I told him that wasn't enough change to do a full load of laundry, and he started crying and getting snot all over my pillow. I had to go wake up the RD person in charge of the dorm and have him escorted out. Then he wouldn't stop sending me messages. They became more desperate until they became threats at rape. I saved the messages and used them to file a restraining order. A few other girls wanted in on it, so Weird Larry was evicted from his own dormitory and had to drop out of school. Too long didn't read, came into my dorm room uninvited, then gave me some quarters and told me he was paying me for sex. Then he cried when I said number, wound up needing a restraining order. 14 years old and alone on the subway. Man sits in a seat across from me, spreads his legs and starts masturbating through his pants while staring me straight in the eyes. I was getting ready to jump up and run out at the next stop. An older gentleman suddenly appeared, stood directly in front of me like a shield and stared the guy down. At the next stop, he pointed to the door and made him get off. I hope I said thank you, but I was in shock. So thank you, dear man who protected me and made me feel safe. When I was 13, a 50-something-year-old man said in front of my mother that if I ever misbehaved he would give me a spanking, kinda out of the blue. Then when her attention was averted, he kinda snuck a hug for a few seconds too long. Nothing super crazy but hella awkward. I had an old friendly Gramps type of neighbor tell me I was gonna be a good-looking chick one day as he kissed my cheek and ran his thumb over my lips in front of my mother. I was 9. My mom pulled me back, gave him a death look. Then we left immediately. Good mom, and duck in. When I delivered pizzas and I was 18, this guy asked me if I wanted to step in while he grabbed his money. It was cold and rainy, so I took him up on the offer. He ended up trying to keep me there. Today I learned his mom got home because he didn't have enough for the pizza. He tried to force me into a pyramid scheme and kept making uncomfortable comments about me. I had left my phone in my car, so I couldn't text my manager to call me to give me an out, because no matter how hard I tried to leave, this guy would find some way to block my path. I took off when he went to the bathroom and told my manager about what happened. Females weren't allowed to deliver to him anymore. We eventually found out he was a convicted sex offender too. Normally I find it out and I always have an escape plan, but I put myself in a position where I couldn't give myself an escape. I went on to manage deliver pizzas for several years, but after that day I implemented a new rule, which was never enter anyone's home unless I knew who it was. I'd stand in the pouring rain any day over entering a stranger's home. I come from a safe, low crime area, but my gut instinct that night was that I was in danger. I am a male, and a customer I delivered to, also a male, got pretty creepy with me. The first time I delivered to him, he invited me in to put the pizzas down while he got his cash and everything seemed totally normal. The second time I delivered food to him, he wasn't answering the door. I called the number on the slip and finally he came saying that he had fallen asleep cause he took Benadryl after getting bit by a spider, but he was really just trying to get my phone number on caller ID. I didn't go in that time cause I had another order to deliver. But as I was walking back to my car, he asked if I could get him a pack of cigarettes. At some point on my travels, he tipped me another $10. That never happened. Then he called the store at the end of my shift and asked if I left a watch at his house. Then he'd call my phone with his number blocked, say something like, "Hey, wanna duck?" Hang up, then call with his number unblocked so my caller ID would get it, but he'd hang up once I answered. He did that a few times in the same day, so I called the cops, but finally called him back and told time to stop. I don't think he ever ordered food from our restaurant again. And that's why Domino's drivers use the app now, and it contacts the customer from an auto-generated number that the customer can call back but not have your own number. When I delivered the first time around 5 or 6 years ago, we just multiply 60-70 people if we wanted to keep our number private. A guy saw me in the metro and thought I was cute, which meant he had to follow me on my 5-kilometer walk home to my flat in the middle of the night. He introduced himself to me as I was about to put in the key to my door. Lived in a super cheap, super shitty apartment when I was in college. It was a decent city, but the apartment was located in the only bad neighborhood. I was willing to deal with it for $300 per month rent because of the price. People constantly moved in and then bailed after a month or two. One of these people was an older 50s, 60s veteran. He seemed polite at first, but after he had been there a few days, I'd catch him weirdly leaning to watch me from behind a wall when I'd be outside. When my boyfriend wasn't around, he'd wait for me to be outside and then run up to start a conversation. The conversations were usually harmless at first, then would get creepy, like asking what my favorite sex position is and other inappropriate questions. About 2 months in, I was leaving my house at like 10 p.m. and I saw him stumbling around the parking lot covered in blood. I quickly left and never saw him again. However, a few days later, my landlord knocked on my door and was pale in the face. He asked me if I had seen anything unusual with the guy. I explained that I had and asked why. He said that if I ever see him on the property again, I need to call the cops first and then call him. It took some trying to find out why, and he told me that he just wanted to clean out his apartment and all that the guy had in his house was a dirty mattress, a broken toaster, and a full-on sex dungeon. I don't know what all that entailed, but he mentioned the place was full of bondage and restraint type things. It still makes my skin crawl to think about it. The most memorable was when I was sitting in my parents' front garden on the swing, reading. The way everything is laid out with the trees and whatnot, you can barely see the swing deck BBQ area from any perspective that's not from the front door. Very private spot. Anyway, I was just sitting there reading when I hear someone walking up. Assume it's a family member because how would it not be? Someone plops down on the swing next to me, throws an arm around me, and it's just some ducking guy. Says some stuff, tries to move closer, and proceeds to attempt to keep me from leaving. When I get up, I get the duck out of there, practically sprint back to the house and tell my dad what just happened and that there's some asshole in our garden being completely gross at me. He just laughs and says, "Oh, that's just new across the street neighbor. Be nice." The duck. Over the next couple years, shithead will go on to make me and my older, only occasionally visiting sisters super uncomfortable any chance he got. Long stories, and his poor but large and angry dog was always loose in the neighborhood and murdering other people's pets. That mother ducker still makes my blood boil. It's a tie outside of a string of bars. A drunk man yelled, "You're my type," then ran up, bear hugged me, picked me up, and wouldn't let me go. My male friends intervened and somehow the guy fell over and took me down with him and still wouldn't let go. I was so shocked that I didn't fight back, but I wish I would have. The other was a guy who followed me into my apartment building lobby and wouldn't leave. He was under the impression that he was going to be invited to my place. I got rid of him by giving him a fake phone number. I am sorry, random person who likely received texts from the creep. Guy used to come into the comic book store where I worked, and he had a crush on me. I tried to send clear signals I wasn't interested, and several other people told him I wasn't interested. He would always tickle my waist, so I established a no-touching rule. He respected the rule, but gave me a hard time about why it only applied to him. Answer: nobody else was groping me. If you don't grope me, you're allowed to touch my shoulder or shake my damn hand. He ended up asking me out 3 times, and I turned him down 3 times. He then started walking in, punching his fist into his palm and saying things like all women deserve to be punished several times. He also lied to everybody else he knew who went to the store, a lot of people. He was a gamer there, telling them I was really vain and I thought he was interested in me, but actually I was the one who was. Misreading the situation. Creep. Typical incel harassment. Also retribution for being turned down. It's too bad you didn't have the power to just ban him. That kind of behavior is what leads to an unsafe workplace. You should not have had to put up with it, especially when he started saying that all women deserve to be punished. Shit. That's some textbook talk before someone gets assaulted. Shit. You know what's sad? I am ashamed to admit it. My boss gave me the option of banning him because he noticed the change in the creep's behavior when the creep started getting more violent, sulky, and I declined. I felt bad for the guy, like society trained me to be. I was also scared about retribution. The gaming community this guy was part of was very happy to believe and spread lies about me and treat me like shit as a result of these rumors. This guy was deaf a potential quintessential incel. He told me his story about this poor friend of his who was falsely accused of rape, and when I asked him for details, he explained that his friend had sex with a woman who passed out at the friend's house, which was obviously consensual. Can you see why I didn't want to date him? Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing for more videos.